Hi, my name is Robert Rill. I'm a deputy prosecutor here in Marion County.
And my name is Julie Ann Badd. I am also a deputy prosecutor here in Marion County, specializing in the Adult Protective Service cases.
And today we're going to talk to you about the CASE partnership, which is Communities Against Senior Exploitation.
Rob, tell us a little bit about how CASE was started.
CASE was started first in Denver, Colorado, and the prosecuting attorney there realized a need for helping out the elderly because they had been targeted with scams. And the United States Department of Justice looked at the program and decided to replicate it, and Indianapolis was one of the 25 target cities.
And you've been giving this presentation for quite some time.
I've been giving this presentation since 2007.
Okay. And you are able to get this presentation live by calling my phone number, 327-5716, and we will send out one of our deputy prosecutors to give the presentation to your group.
So get ready, grab a pen and a piece of paper, and because we're going to give you a lot of information that we think you can use today.
So the first fraud is fairly common and has increased over the years. Identity theft. In 2005, 5.5% of United States households have been affected by identity theft. That rose in 2010 to about 7%. Of those victimized, 64% had their credit card used. However, despite the rise in identity theft, actual loss has decreased. From 2005 to 2010, it went from 18.5% to 23.7% who had no financial loss, meaning their identity was stolen, but they didn't lose a penny. So why would that occur? Because people are now better at early detection. Rob, how can you tell, or how can you catch it early on?
Well, things to look for: always check your bank account. If you notice unusual activity on your checking account, and oftentimes if you've misplaced an item, which is a purse, a wallet, or any type of mail, even if it's just temporarily misplaced, that could give someone the time and the opportunity to take your information. So if you're expecting mail to arrive and it hasn't arrived, or if you're looking through your bills and you've paid them and they still are showing as due, these are warning signs. It's always good to check your credit, and you can do that up to 3 times a year for free, and we'll talk about that later.
And you know, Rob, you mentioned a lost purse. In my case, I once had a check stolen and I didn't even know my purse was lost. I went to a wedding, started with a larger purse, and as we were going from the wedding to the reception, I moved to a smaller purse, threw my purse in the trunk, didn't even think about the fact that my checkbook was in there, and also, you know, days later didn't notice the check was missing because it wasn't the top check, it was further down. But because I was checking my statements so often, I noticed as soon as that check was entered into my account and the money taken. Is that common, or was that just a crazy chance?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's very common, and it just takes one check, and then because you have your banking information on the bottom of the check is your bank number. It's a unique number that's attached to your bank, and the number following that is your routing number, which is a unique number attached to you. And that would be all they would need to know. They could take your check and forge it and have access to your bank account.
So what are some ways that we can keep preventing identity theft?
Well, one of the things that, one important thing you can do is do not carry more than you need. And always, if you're going to be in a crowd of people, it's always best to put your wallet in your front pocket, or if you have a purse, do not wrap it around you. Try to keep it very close to you, but don't wrap it around you. And reduce all the items that you carry, because really, are you going to need 7 credit cards every time you go out? Are you going to need your Social Security card number or your Social Security card every time you leave?
Now you say that, do I need my social? My mom refuses not to take her Social Security card with her because she claims she needs it. Say she goes to Macy's and wants to apply for a credit card. Is there a trick maybe she could use?
Well, you can always use the trick of using it as a phone number. Say, because it basically has a 8 digits and a phone number has 9 digits. So you could say, well, this isn't my Social Security number, but you could say 1-9-413-235-8724. And that would just work just like a phone number.
And then
So,
she could still have it and not have her card.
yes, yes. That's just one way to remember it. But most of the time, you're not going to need to know your Social Security or need your Social Security card. So it's always best to keep that in a locked security box at home. And another thing to prevent is to shred everything you do, or every piece of mail that you have, because people. It's very common. People will do what is commonly called as dumpster diving, and they will go through trash and try to find information and then sell that information. So it's good to go to the store and buy a nice shredder and be careful everything you put out for disposal, because somebody might be going through it. And also to try to use a locked mailbox at the post office, and pay your bills online. Also use direct deposit.
So what if someone steals your wallet? Is there anything you can do to prepare for that?
Well, absolutely. It's always best to keep in a safe deposit box your information that you have. You photocopy all of your credit cards, your numbers, your information, the telephone numbers to reach them, and so that way, if any of your items have been stolen, you can contact them immediately and tell them, report that as stolen, and reduce the risk of fraud.
And you've put some interesting photographs on this slide. What is the one of the vehicle?
This goes back to one of the first things we mentioned is please do not wrap your purse around you, because if someone were to try to snatch your purse, they may take you along with them. And this is what happened here. A person had their purse wrapped around them, and they basically were dragged along with the vehicle as they were fighting off the robber. And that's happened very frequently. There's another example of a woman who was stopped and asked, someone stopped her and asked her for directions, and then ended up taking her purse, and basically she sustained a lot of injuries just because it was wrapped around her when he tried to grab it from her. And he ended up getting around $18 and some of her Social Security card and credit card, and she sustained a lot of injuries.
And almost worse than just having your purse taken.
Yes, yes.
Now, when it comes to identity theft, you have to be very careful about what information you give over the phone. In Indianapolis, I run the fraud hotline, so I hear a lot of the frauds that people get and some of the strange phone calls they receive. For example, one woman stated to me that she had received a phone call for her granddaughter from the Federal Institute of Fraud Institution. Now, it just sounded funny to her, so she gave me a call. They had even given her a phone number for her granddaughter to call back. So I called that number. When I did so, I was transferred to a call center. They then transferred me out to someone else. I looked at some of the numbers that they had given, and they were all in different countries, Canada, here, overseas. When I spoke to them, they were very hesitant to talk, and as soon as they learned I was a deputy prosecutor, they hung up. That tells me it was a fraud. She had the right idea. But how did they get all that information? Well, she had received a phone call days before stating, we're needing to talk to, let's say, Susie Q. Susie Q wasn't her name, it was her daughter's name. She couldn't figure out how they got that name, but when I talked to her daughter receives all of her mail at that house. So they had obviously seen something in the mail and then called that residence asking for that person. Now, additionally, she received some information on her diabetes through the mail, and they somehow knew that too, because when they asked for Susie Q, they said they had information on her diabetes. This woman was lucky to catch it, but that was a pretty good fraud, and some people could be taken by that. Another common fraud I've seen is once they get that name. So say when they called her, they asked for Susie Q. She said, "I'm sorry, Susie Q doesn't live here. That's my daughter." 2 days later, someone different would call back and say, "Your daughter, Susie Q, has been arrested. She needs bond money. You can send it to this number or to this and this. What's your bank account number? We'll do it for you. What's your credit card number?" They'll let her out. Be very careful about that information you give. Now, Rob, one of the other common schemes I've seen is wanting information because you've won the lottery. Have you ever seen that?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I have won the lottery in Australia, Ireland, Spain, everywhere except Indiana. But unfortunately, I have not purchased any tickets, and that is a requirement to win a lottery. So it's basically another scam where you're promised millions of dollars, but yet you have to pay a small processing fee. And that processing fee is basically they're going to take that money from you. They want, it might be something as $5,000 to get $5 million, but and they'll ask for your bank account or to Western Union the money, and you'll never see that money again. So, and these are common internet and sometimes phone scams, and telemarketing fraud is a very large problem. What are some of the other warning signs, Julie?
Well, oftentimes, if you live alone and you like talking to basically anyone who calls, you're highly susceptible. Also, if you have a problem hanging up, if you feel it's rude. Now, my mom is very quiet, very meek, hates to hang up the phone, but she came up with something she can use. "It smells like something's burning. I'll have to let you go." She knows that they have to hang up quickly. It's not rude if she hangs up because there's something more important she has to go see. Now, I also like to give out an exact quote. "If you can't mail me the information, then I can't talk to you." Because a lot of times, if they're not legitimate, they're not going to take the time to put together a mailer. But if they are a legitimate company, they likely already have something that they can send you in the mail. So request that they send you something in the mail. If they won't, simply state, "I'm sorry, if you can't send me something in the mail, I cannot talk to you." Also, and just a time saver, you could try out, "I'd like some time to think about this. What's your number? And if I'm interested, I'll call you back." Scammers don't like to be called back because that extra time allows you to get advice from other people and maybe to learn that they're a scam artist. Also, they might change their numbers quickly because once found out, they need a new number to make the scam continue to work. Some other issues might be if the deal just seems too good to be true. If they ask for some sort of payment up front, but in turn promise lots and lots of money in return, it's likely not a good deal. And we all know salesmen are pushy, but I guarantee con men are always pushy. If they're trying to get you to sign things fast, beware, there's probably a reason. And going back to that woman who received multiple phone calls from different con men, I've put a boomerang up because once they get you, they're going to keep coming back. They'll change their story a little bit. But if you start receiving more and more phone calls from telemarketers, they might not be legit. And finally, remember they're not your friend. Sometimes when we're at home alone and we receive calls, it's fun to talk to those people. I've found myself getting stuck on the phone. I like to talk a lot. But you have to remember they're not your friend and they can use any of that information against you. It's obvious. You know not to give out your bank account number. You know not to give out your Social Security. I'm even pretty careful not giving my full name. But you forget not to give your granddaughter's name or not to say that you attend church at a certain church. And the con men will trade off information and have someone new, because they often work in groups, call you back and use that information claiming to already know it.
And one thing you said, Julie, is that telemarketers, even legitimate telemarketers, if you buy something from a telemarketer, prepared to get 10 times the calls, because not only are you valuable to them because you purchased something, but you're valuable because they can sell your information to someone else as someone who has recently purchased an item. So if you purchase one thing from a telemarketer, even if it's legitimate, you're opening yourself up to a flood of phone calls. And one way to stop these phone calls is to register with a do not call registry. You can call a number which is the National Do Not Call List, and it's 1-888-382-1322 or www.donotcall.gov, and that's good for a 5-year period. It'll put you on the Do Not Call list. It'll normally take about 31 days for that to be processed and for that information to get out, so they will not call you. Also, Indiana has a Do Not Call list, and phone number is 1-888-834-9969. And Indiana has long been one of the leaders among states as far as the Do Not Call list and the Do Not Call registry. But it's not fail-safe. There are certain groups that can still call you, and they are exempt through the law or through the Constitution, actually. Charities, politicians, and also companies that you do business. They are exempt from the Do Not Call list. So even if you do register, there are still some people that will be able to call you. If you're still receiving calls from an organization that has previously contacted you, or after you've been on the Do Not Call list, you can contact, again, the National Do Not Call list through the website mentioned before, and also the Indiana Do Not Call list at 1-812-355-5915. And you can register a complaint against that business who is calling you.
Now, we've talked about a few of these preventative steps, but remember, never talk to strangers on the phone. Screen your phone calls. You can either use an answering machine or a caller ID. Do not give out any personal information, and we mean any. And take steps to determine if your caller is legitimate. If someone calls you and say you bank with a certain bank and they claim they're from that bank, well, you can hang up on them and call them back. Let them know you've got to go. Hang up. Find their phone number yourself. Don't ask them for it. I know it seems silly, but sometimes people don't think about that. Once you've found the phone number by yourself, then call back and ask for that person.
An increasing problem today is mail and internet fraud. And one of the warning signs is if you play sweepstakes, hoping to win a big prize someday, because you are playing those games, receiving the offers in the mail, responding, filling out the forms, and sending them off, just like the telemarketers, they will take your information and share it with other companies, and you will be bombarded with more and more junk mail. And also you can receive and open your mail, and you look, and oftentimes these pieces look like official government documents, but they're really just sales pitches. They'll use terms like federal, just like the example that Julie mentioned earlier with the Financial Institute of Fraud institution. Because they will try to use names that sort of go in line with government names to give them an air of importance or more sounding like an official organization. And increasingly you might find that you're getting these same offers that you used to get in the mail that you would now receive through email.
Now, it's scary the amount of information that can be found out about us online merely by us surfing the web. Many names, phishing, brand spoofing, and carding, explain that process. But I want to explain to you what's been just occurring to me in my everyday. I obviously do a lot of research on elder law, issues that elders may have. In my email and on the sides of my search engines are now things popping up. 50+ singles meet someone. knee replacement loss center. None of those types of emails were popping up before I did this job and before I was making those searches. So be aware that, legitimate or not, people know a lot more information about you. A lot of times we have a relaxed sense around those who know things about us because we figure they're already familiar with us for some legitimate reason. Don't fall for that. Now, the scams are getting much better over the email. I received an email several days ago, and I've changed the end name to my own name just so for privacy purposes. But I had a friend who I hadn't talked to in a while, and she does do a lot of traveling, and I received an email from her email account, an account that I have sent and received emails from before and I knew legitimately was her account. It read, "I'm sorry if this gets to you too sudden. It had to come in a hurry due to the urgency of the situation. I made a quick trip to Barcelona, Spain, and had my luggage stolen from me, with my passport and credit card in it. The embassy has cooperated by issuing a temporary passport. I just have to pay for a ticket and settle the hotel bills. With my wallet stolen, I've made contact with my bank, but the best they could do was suggest to me a new card in the mail, which will take 3 to 5 working days to arrive here." Now, so far this sounded fairly legitimate to me. The English is good. I'd never received an email with such great English that was a fraud. Additionally, it made sense. If I've lost my card before, and it does take several days to get a new one. It finishes off with, though, "I was hoping you could loan me some money to sort things out, and I will definitely pay back," the English slips a little there, "once I get this over with." Apparently, Western Union seemed to be the fastest and safest way to make the transfer, so let me know if you want my details for the transfer. Now, here's where it gets even trickier. You can reach me via email or hotel's desk phone, and the number is, and she left a number. Now, I guarantee had I called that number, they would have had someone answering the phone. That way it seemed a little more legitimate. I also guarantee that someone who answered the phone likely would have been willing to take my credit card number. So the scams are getting better and better. Now, Rob, with the scammers getting so much better, what can we do to prevent this from happening to us?
Well, unfortunately, the simple thing is, even though it's fun to do so, it's best probably to stop participating in a lot of contests, because when you participate in a contest, think about the entry form. You're giving a lot of personal information about yourself, and oftentimes it's attached with a survey, and they're asking questions about your interests. So they're really fishing for information about you that they can share, and share it with various organizations, which could come back to really haunt you, because once they've learned all this information about you, they can use it against you and show some familiarity, like you spoke about earlier. So oftentimes it's just best not to participate in these contests. And also, if you do win a contest, remember, never ever pay a processing fee to receive your prize. You should never ever have to do that. It's a law. If you win something, you win something. And this reminds me of a scam a few years ago where a company sent out millions of mailings to people, and all they asked for was $20. They asked for $20 to win a prize that they had, and they received a lot of money, $20 at a time. And it took the United States Postal Inspectors to finally shut them down, because thousands of people were like, well, I can pay $20 and possibly receive a prize worth several $1,000s. So, but you should never have to do that. If you win something, you win it outright. You do not have to pay any type of processing fee. Also, as we mentioned, any type of mailing that you receive promoting sweepstakes, lotteries, charities, credit repair, work-at-home offers, these things are often ways that they are trying to get your information. It's just best to either throw away, shred that email, throw it away, or shred the mail, throw it away, or delete the email without even opening it. Same thing with the scams about helping out a wealthy foreigner. And I've received these emails where my last name is Real, and there was a person named Real who was killed in a car wreck in Africa, and I must be the heir. And of course, they're trying to get me to send a processing fee, Western Union that money to them, and I'll never receive it back. So always be leery of any requests for money or for account numbers. Throw away that mail and delete the emails. And lastly, as more and more people use wireless internet, make sure that you put a lock on your internet, because if you do not, often people are paying their bills online and they're sending out information with account numbers, bank account numbers, and if you leave that signal open, there are many people that could intercept it and find that information out about you. So always try to use an encryption code or a lock on your wireless internet.
Now, I'd mentioned that one of those phone calls came from another country. Do you see that very often in these frauds?
It's very common. And a lot of the fraudulent activity operates out of other countries. They may have an office or a location that's in the United States, and it might just be a drop location or a dummy location, but a lot of the scam artists are operating out of the country, and which makes it very difficult for law enforcement and prosecution, because we have there are extradition issues, venue issues, and it's very, very difficult to prosecute, and so that's become a real problem in trying to end all these scam operators from other countries.
Now, we've talked about criminals that will reach you via the phone, out in public, or over the internet. But, Rob, what do you think is the easiest way for a criminal to get into your home? Number one, punching a hole through the door and turning the handle, you letting them in, or picking the lock?
Oh, easy, letting them in. Because when people come and knock on the door, a good con artist can get inside of your home.
Mm-hmm. And they're good con artists because oftentimes they smile, they're inviting, they want to gain your trust. And they feed off of three things: greed, fear, and your insecurities. A lot of times con men will be forceful, asking for quick decisions, making you feel dumb if you want to get an advisor to talk about this before you make the decision. And they offer up too good to be deals. So take it today or it's not here anymore. One type of common fraud in Indianapolis that will come from you trusting someone is home improvement fraud.
Yes, home improvement fraud is a very, very common fraud. We see it all the time in Indianapolis. There are often people are going door to door and saying that they have a bargain. We have some leftover materials. We just did a roofing job just down the street, and we have all these leftover shingles, and we're willing to give you a good price if you just pay us a few $100s up front, and we'll come back tomorrow and we'll repair your roof. And oftentimes if you do that, you'll never see them again, or once they've started the job, there is a significant price increase. And oftentimes we've seen people, if they're not posing as door-to-door home improvement persons, they're a city inspector who will say, you have a problem, your roof is leaking, and I might be able to refer you to a person who can take care of that for very cheaply. So some of the preventive steps that one should take is to beware of door-to-door contractors who pressure you into immediate decision. Just as Julie spoke earlier, salesmen are pushy, but con men are even pushier, and because they want you to make that split decision and not confer with others who might alert you that this is probably not a good idea. And do not do business with someone who comes to your door offering you a bargain. If you need home improvement, you know it, and it's always good to contact contractors and try to at least get 3 written bids. And also, maybe the lowest bidder isn't the person that you're looking for. You might want to, investigate that. Look at the Better Business Bureau or Angie's List before you allow someone to do work in your home. And of course, ask for photo identification or take a picture. And because you want to know, especially if you're letting them in your home, who exactly you're dealing with. And another thing to look at is on the Attorney General's website as well, because they have information about some contractors who have had a lot of complaints filed against them as well. So it's best not to let strangers in your home, and city inspectors will not go door to door.
So some other just general preventions of those door-to-door crimes. Surround yourself with several advisors. If you're trying to make a decision, don't make it on your own. Ask your neighbors, especially if it's maybe a contractor who has done work throughout the neighborhood. Ask people at work. Ask people at church. Ask people at your neighbor bingo game that you play every Friday. Thoroughly check out that offer too. Oftentimes we just get used to reading through the fine print, not really seeing what it says, and signing the form. Or feeling like we're dumb if we have to sit there for too long to read through. Or getting uncomfortable with the silence as you're reading through. Don't be uncomfortable. Don't feel like you're dumb. Take your time to read that form before you sign. Carefully review your financial statements. Make sure that if there are any unauthorized transactions, you call your bank immediately and let them know. Sometimes we're wrong. I myself have called the bank to complain about something I thought was unauthorized, but then we figured it out that it was a transaction that I had made that I just didn't realize was through that company. So don't worry about being wrong. Go ahead and check. It never hurts. Some scammers will start with legitimate transactions and move to more criminal activity. For example, we've seen a lot of man walks down the road, I just lost my job, I don't have a way of feeding my family, can I mow your lawn? You pay him, he does indeed mow your lawn. However, as he's mowing your lawn, he's been checking out what's in your garage because you let him go into the garage to get the lawnmower. And later, shocker, your tool set's gone. Be careful doing business with strangers, even if it seems legit. Another example of a fraud here in Indianapolis. Not too long ago, probably 6 months ago, there was a rash of people walking around town saying they were selling alarm systems. My own roommate, who lives with the prosecutor and knows what to look for, was duped. She let the man in. He asked her where she keeps her valuables because you would need more security there, asked where her weapons were, same reasoning, and then asked to walk around the house and look at any crack or way that you could possibly get into the home so that he knew how much it would cost to put an alarm system in that home. Now, when I got home, I may have been angry for a second, but then I realized just how good these scammers can be. I highly suggest if someone comes to your door to ask to take a photo of them. Ask for photo ID. That way, if they're not legit and you can turn it in later, we know who the person was and we've got a great ID. You took a photo. So I asked my roommate to do that. He was claiming he would come back tomorrow for more information. And I told her to let him know that she needed a picture of him and she didn't think he was legit. Well, before he came back, he called and she told him that. Shocker, he never came back. Additionally, we walked through the house. When he had gone through the house looking at those openings, he had actually cracked open one of the windows in our back bedrooms. Very scary. He was planning to come back, just not when we were home. But speaking of criminals who could come into your home welcomed, we move on to caregiver fraud. Some of the warning signs for caregiver fraud would be unusual activity in bank and credit card accounts. Isolation is huge. If they cause the person they're caring for to rely solely on their help, then they're probably moving in to some sort of situation where they could take advantage of them. If you have a friend who normally, say, shows up to those bingo games and stops coming, It's okay to be nosy. Find out why. It's possible that they've declined in their health and their caregiver is making sure that they're not having contact with anyone else. Also, if the caregiver has total control over the finances, part of that control might be that they're redirecting all of the person's mail to them, either through a P.O. box or through their own mailing address. That way no one can see the inappropriate use on that account because they're receiving the statements and not the person who should be. Finally, if there are new acquaintances who appear on the scene, say the caregiver's children move in, or the adult is either completely charmed of that caregiver or they're completely fearful of that caregiver. Don't be afraid to be nosy. And I've thrown a picture of a phone on here because part of that isolation is that oftentimes the caregivers will try to limit the access to a phone. If you have someone who thinks that they're fine, thinks that their caregiver is not hurting them, but their caregiver is starting to isolate them and has taken away their phone privileges, you can slip them a cell phone, even without a cell phone package, because all cell phones have to be able to call 911. Keep in mind, though, cell phones do lose their charge. So you need to make sure it's fully charged, turned off, so that they could turn it on and hit 911 in a situation where they might need to. And continue to check on them. I can't press enough. Don't worry to be nosy. Some of the preventative steps. Before you make decisions, get 2 or 3 other opinions from relatives or advisors. Also, never sign documents that you've not read or don't understand. Insist on receiving and reviewing copies of all bank and financial statements. Don't let someone else take complete control. And if you do have other people taking control, make sure it's multiple people that can check each other with some sort of, if I spend this much money, I will let you know, or you can control the finances, but I'm going to review all the statements type deal. And do not give your PIN number to a caregiver. It seems easy enough that if a caregiver is taking care of you and going and getting your groceries, that you give them access to your money. However, if you give them access to your PIN number, you have basically stated they can have it all. They can clear your account and your bank will not refund it because you gave them permission by giving them your PIN number. If a caregiver is doing this to someone you know, you must report it. In the state of Indiana, if a person believes or has a reason to believe that an endangered adult is the victim of either battery, neglect, or exploitation, and they knowingly fail to report that, and by giving the facts that support that belief, the facts that made them think that that person was in danger, then they commit a Class B misdemeanor. You must report. Reporting can be done to either your local emergency through 911 or through Adult Protective Services. And that number here in Marion County is 1-877-284-0063.
Another way that people have often been targeted through scams is by people purporting to be charities. And often they will use a charity name that is very similar to an existing charity. And often they will take advantage of a situation of, for example, the Haiti earthquake or the tsunami that was a few years ago, or even Katrina. They will say, we are collecting for that disaster relief, and we'd like you to give. But often it's just people taking advantage of a situation. People's hearts are open at that time, especially, and wanting to help and wanting to give. So one thing to always do is check out unfamiliar charities, and you can look at several websites, the charitynavigator.org, there's give.org, or through the Better Business Bureau. And especially if you're contacted by phone, you can ask them to mail you written information about the charity. Ask for their financial records to make sure that all those monies that they're receiving are not being eaten up through costs. And also another group of the scammers like to target people who want to support police and firefighters. And there are often unauthorized groups that are alleging to collect for police or firefighters, but really it's just it's really a scam. And so it's always best to contact, if you know a police officer or a firefighter, to ask who the best charity is to give to. And just like telemarketers, if you give to one of these charity scammers, there will be several more contact you, and that has happened to me actually. I once gave money. I received a phone call and they asked me to give to a police organization, and within days I did, and with days I received calls for to give to the police officers and their canine dogs, and then buy bulletproof vests, and then I did a little investigation. I found out that I had been duped. So it's best to always check with your local law enforcement or firefighter. And also, you could figure, if you're doing your budget at the beginning of the year, especially when you're considering tax and possible donations for deductions on your tax, you might want to draw up a charitable giving plan. And it's best to figure that out and have a list of charities that you may want to donate to and how much you will donate. And you can tell, especially a telephone solicitor, that I have already filled out my plans for this year, who I'm going to donate to and how much I'm going to give to them. If you would like me to donate next year, please send me your annual report and I'll decide whether or not I want to include you in my giving.
Now, another common scam is a fake check scam. You may have a stranger approach you, asking you to cash a check for them, and they'll even give you some of the money back in return. You may purchase an item from someone, either on the internet or through an ad in the paper, and they'll give you a check paying for that item. Days later, only to find either that check was no good or the check wasn't even real. Finally, you could receive a check in the mail stating that if you just give a little bit of money, you can cash this check and it's yours. But then it turns out the check's not real. Now, when I was first told you can't accept a check for something you're buying on the internet, I thought, well, duh. However, I didn't think that about a certified check or a money order until I had a friend sell a motorcycle, receive a money order that looked legit. He took it to his bank before he handed over the title. The bank put it in his account, and then he gave the motorcycle away. 3 days later, the money wasn't in his account. He called the bank to find out why. It wasn't a legitimate money order. In the case of selling to someone over the internet, I would suggest going to the bank with the buyer as the buyer is asking for that check so that you know it's legitimate because you're watching it come from the bank. So what do you do now? First, make sure that you're getting a free copy of your credit report. You can do this 1 to 3 times a year for free. It is required for the credit reporting companies to give you a free report once a year, and there are 3 of them. So spread them out. Don't talk to strangers on the phone. Don't talk to strangers at your door or on the street. Sign up for the Do Not Call registry. We've listed the numbers for both Indiana and the National Registry. And do not do business with those who solicit by telephone, known as cold calls, or who solicit door to door. Finally, consult with an attorney to discuss advance directives and set up a checks and balances system so that one person doesn't have complete control over you as you age.
If your identity is stolen, immediately file a report with the police, and also contact the Attorney General's office. Request your credit report from one of the 3 credit reporting agencies and report to the fraud unit. And also contact your financial institution, your bank. Cancel all your accounts, your credit cards, your debit card, and your PIN numbers, and stop any payments on outstanding checks. And one thing you may want to do is subscribe to a credit report monitoring service that will include any fraud watch emails and frequent notices of your credit reports or any unusual activity on those reports. And also ask your local utility companies, especially mobile phone companies, to watch for anyone ordering services in your name, because if there are any falsified accounts, contact the Public Utility Commission. As Julie mentioned, there are 3 major reporting agencies, and you can contact them or through the government. The government requires these agencies to give you a report. And as Julie mentioned, it's good, since there are 3 major agencies, to spread it out throughout the year. Through Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion, you can space it out, and that way every few months you're getting a free report on any credit activity. And the best way to do that is through the website annualcreditreport.com. And the phone number is listed as well, 877-322-8228. On the, you'll see on television, freecreditreport.com. Well, it's not free. There is a charge. So it is a company, and they will charge you to access your credit. The annualcreditreport.com is through the government, and that is free. You can also download a copy of your annual credit request form at annualcreditreport.com and then mail it to the address shown on your screen. The 3 major credit agencies are listed upon your screen: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And if there are any thefts or unauthorized use of your credit card or Social Security number, contact those agencies immediately at the numbers listed on your screen.
All too often, people do not report fraud once they've been duped. Either they're embarrassed, they feel that they'll look dumb, or they just don't think it's that important, or that the person will be caught. So they don't make that call to 911. Because of that, our office has enacted a fraud hotline number so that you might feel more comfortable to call. If you've been defrauded, I highly suggest reporting through the 911 system. However, if you just don't feel comfortable doing that, please call 327-5396.
I am Deputy Prosecutor Robert Reel.
And I'm Deputy Prosecutor Julianne Batt, and thank you for watching today.